Thank you, Blair, and certainly to all of you from out of town, welcome to Memphis, Shelby County. And to those, our local grown folks, you all are representing us well. I feel like I'm really among friends with Laura Adams and Jack and so many local folks, Mike Carpenter, who have been such a strategic part. Martha here, goodness gracious, Martha, sweetheart. Martha's everywhere in a positive way. But it's good to be among local friends as we talk to you today. Now, Martha heard this presentation about 2 weeks ago, and as I was coming into the room, I said, Martha, if I miss anything, please correct me. So please jump in. But once again, thank you all for being here and giving us the opportunity to talk a little bit about some innovative things that we are undertaking. Now, I would hesitate to say that we haven't completed it. I like to say that we're very much in the formative stages of what we feel is some efficiency measures that have some great potential for our greater community here. I've got to give a shout out to Blair here, because Blair is really one that got me focused on this early in my tenure as the county mayor. With Memphis Fast Forward, which Blair is very actively engaged, and if you haven't heard about it, just stand close to Blair for about 2 minutes and she'll tell you all about Memphis Fast Forward. But one of the pillars of Memphis Fast Forward is government efficiency. And not a lot had been done in that area for a while, and she and I started talking about it early in my tenure as the county mayor. And I said, tell us what we can do to really find out what it is that the Memphis Tomorrow group wants as far as efficiency. And as we talked, we realized that so many of our goals were very much in alignment. So Blair, I appreciate certainly the emphasis that you personally and that Fast Forward has given to this initiative and showing this support as we move forward with some of what we think are some bold initiatives in the area of efficiency. When I became mayor in September of 2010, for those of you who are elected officials, have been elected officials, I think one of the first things that you want to know when you assume that new position is, are you in trouble? Where are you in trouble before you even know it? But I asked Harvey Kennedy, and let me just by way of comment, I just introduce Harvey. Harvey has been with me since I was actually before my sheriffing years. Prior to being sheriff, I was the division director for county government over the Division of Corrections. And Shelby County has a rather unique corrections division. We have a local county facility, workhouse facility with about 3,000 inmates. Huge operation. We have a very unique contract with the state of Tennessee where we keep felons at our facility up to, I think, a maximum of 8 years. So about 80% of our 3,000 population are state inmates. So I was in that capacity prior to being elected sheriff. And Harvey was the financial officer for the Corrections Center and served so well there. Harvey, what more can you say? He's a retired 06 Navy captain. You don't mess around with 06 Navy captains, but Harvey's forte has been everything from logistics to financial management. And when I was elected sheriff, I asked him to be the chief administrative officer for me in the sheriff's office, and was side by side with me as we were working through our court mandates and our class action suit. And then when I was elected mayor, it was just a given that I wanted Harvey to go with me in that capacity, and he serves now as my chief administrative officer with day-to-day oversight of the 7 divisions of county government. But upon assuming the role of the county mayor, I asked Harvey, I said, Harvey, do a quick and dirty run-through of the divisions, and let's start looking for the low-hanging fruit real quick. Let's try to make a statement about our commitment to efficiency and cost effectiveness. Let's try to do something quickly. So over a period of a few weeks, Harvey came back and said, you know, there's some mid-management positions that we can eliminate. Actually, we have some salaries that are excessive, his being one of them. So we cut some, had to make an example, but we cut some salaries, we eliminated some positions, we did some consolidation of functions, There were a number of things that we did that really were quick fixes, but I thought it was important that we really establish ourselves with the community as being an administration that was going to focus seriously on being more cost effective and looking for those areas of waste in county government. But really, that started a trend that we followed each year in county government for the last 3 years of really going in. I wouldn't call it zero-based budgeting, because zero-based budgeting is a pretty severe approach to budgeting. We didn't do zero-based budgeting, but we did pretty close to that, because each year Harvey would ask the division directors to really step in and just start justifying everything they were doing. So we were able, really, for 2010, 2011, 2012, to each year realize some savings, either in the reduction of positions, re-engineering functions within county government. And although if you looked at the bottom line, you didn't see much bump in the bottom line, factoring in inflation, we were able to keep our budget operation pretty flat. We've reduced close to 200 positions in the last 3 years, which we're very proud of that fact. But we knew that if we were truly going to make an impact on efficiency, then we had to get a little bit more aggressive. We had to start looking very closely at things that we could be doing better. Change the way we do things and do things differently. So this year, we decided to really engage PFM to come in and do a deep drill for us. We knew back last fall that our appraisals were going to be bad. For the first time in our lifetime, we knew that our property appraisals were going to be down. We knew that that was certainly going to impact our revenue stream, yet we knew that the cost of government was going to remain fairly constant. We immediately started hearing cut. Well, cut is good if there are cuts to be found and made. But you don't necessarily start hollering cut unless you have a good idea of what you're going to cut and the impact that those cuts are going to have. And we had never been able to really give that deep a look at those areas where we could cut. I get a little bit short with the people who come up and say, well, you're the mayor. We're not going to tell you where to cut. We're just going to tell you to cut. My response to that is, if you're going to advocate cuts, then give me some ideas of where you're willing to reduce services. It's very difficult sometimes to get people to do that because they just assume that there's waste in government. And I'm not assuming that there's necessarily waste in government. What I'm assuming is that there are, in this day and age, more efficient ways to conduct the business of government. And we have to, through that process, determine what we can do to maybe reduce the size of government and accomplish the same things or do things even better. So this year, we engaged PFM to come in and really do a deep dive for us and to bring back some recommendations. I guess it was about 3 months ago that they brought their recommendations to us, about 50 recommendations. Several of them are cross-cutting recommendations that apply across county government. Others are more specific to the 7 divisions within the mayor's administration. Now, those of you that are familiar with county government in Tennessee know that the county mayor is not the same as a city mayor, because in county government you have a multitude of independently elected officials: independent sheriff, register, county clerk, assessor of property, trustee. All of those positions are independently elected, and the mayor doesn't have real direct control over any of those positions. But what we felt we could do, at least in the mayor's administration, is we could set the standard by really taking a look at what efficiencies we could realize, certainly on some of those cross-cutting issues that would apply to all other elected officials. We could work very progressively with the other elected officials and see what progress could be made there. But our intent really was to set the standard in the mayor's administration with some real efficiencies, and then take our proposals across county government to all the elected officials and work with all the elected officials to see what we could do to move progressively forward in those areas. So we have 50 recommendations now. Now we're in the process of looking at those things that we can do immediately, those things that we want to try to weave into our fiscal, this is fiscal 14, to the fiscal 15 budget next spring, and those things that, quite frankly, between we folks, may have to wait for another county commission. We have some serious opposition, we know, in various areas of county government that are opposed to any significant changes. And really, for us to realize the efficiencies that we need to make, there are some significant changes that have to be made. So there's certainly a practical side and very much a political side to what we're talking about. So we're in the process now of looking at those 50 recommendations, determining which ones just really are not practical for us, which ones we can do immediately that are within the sphere of influence of the mayor, what things we can put into next year's budget, and then those things that really we just need to refine them, see if we can build some type of consensus in the community as to the need for these changes and build that type of consensus and momentum moving forward. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Kennedy, who has really got his hand on the throttle of this process and moving it forward, and he'll go into a little bit more detail about, first of all, some of the cross-cutting issues that we're considering, and then some of the division-specific issues. And then hopefully that'll generate some dialogue and some questions, and then we can take the discussion in areas of interest to you and maybe things that we missed. Now, I do want to be mindful of time, so how much time do we have? About a half an hour? Okay, a half an hour. Mr. Kennedy, you're on.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate it. Mayor, thank you. As the mayor said, we have cut back on staffing numbers substantially over the 3 years the mayor's been the mayor, but the bottom line is very difficult to bring down, and it gets us into some of the most important of the cross-cutting initiatives, and that involves fringe benefit cost. This is the bane of most organizations right now, and we have watched fringe benefit cost escalate and escalate so that with over $10 million worth of lost salaries due to elimination of positions, the personnel cost we've managed just to keep level. And I promise you it's not because we've been getting pay raises. We haven't been doing that in county government. In the 3 years we've been here, we've had a 1% increase 1 year and a $650 stipend that we applied across the board equally to everyone to take care of some insurance increases. But the cost of insurance has bypassed now pension cost and OPEB cost to be our #1 cost in the budget. And because of that, we're going to do a lot with health care. Health care costs are the #1 attention getter for us right now. And you'll notice under our cross-cutting initiatives, I've highlighted in red the 3 areas that we're really going to concentrate in. I promise I'm not going to drag you through all 50 recommendations here. I could get a little bit tedious. But I do want to talk a little bit about health care, because what we're doing, rather than just slashing benefits, cutting back the viability of the program, we're trying to do some smart things, and most of it goes in concert with the mayor's Healthy Shelby initiative. We're trying to get more healthy initiatives, and we're trying to get a healthier workforce, because we're self-insured, as some government entities are, not all, but some, but we're self-insured, so everything we can do to cut back on the outlay of insurance costs is beneficial to us. But right now, we're putting over $27.5 million a year into our insurance fund to take care of the servicing of the healthcare providers and pharmaceuticals. So we've started a plan now. We're actually going to reduce premiums during the upcoming year for everyone that will go through a full-blown health assessment, record their biometrics, get those things into the system, and then we're going to get that. We're going to reduce premiums so people can identify what the state of their health is. Now, what we haven't advertised quite as heavily in out years, we're going to come along behind that, and we're going to have some enforcement requirements. We'll start, rather than the beneficial premium cuts, we will start to adjust premiums based on compliance with some of the health care requirements. But we're giving them all sorts of opportunities. We're giving a lot of information available to our folks, trying to get them to be healthier, live better lifestyles for two reasons: to cut down on sick leave and also to cut down on the enormous outlay of, out of our insurance fund for health care costs. We'll be working on that, but we've got to do some real specific things too. We have a very generous plan, and we're probably going to have to make some adjustments in our copay and deductible levels, and we're probably going to have to make some adjustments in our maximum outlay for the year. We have a very low maximum outlay, for example, of $1,500 per person. Maximum outlay, the rest of it's coming out of our insurance fund. Deductibles and copays are at the lowest that they can be. We're also going to look at something that's a little bit painful, but we're going to have to do it, and that is, like the school system before us has already done, we may have to look at a spousal carve-out for those spouses of county employees that have available insurance from their own employer. We're going to start first with just the elimination of the secondary coverage, but I think shortly behind that we'll be looking at the elimination of all health insurance other than for employees and their dependent children and spouses that don't work, that don't have another source. We'll, first item of business that we've told the mayor we're going to do, and that is a dependent eligibility audit. I don't know if any of you have subjected your organizations to it, but everywhere that they've done a full-blown eligibility audit, anywhere from 6 to 8% of your listed dependents really aren't eligible for health insurance. We're anticipating a substantial savings in that regard. So that's immediate. We'll be coming along with some adjustments, but we've got to do something about health care costs because it is truly driving the cost of personnel up. We have right now about a 42.5% fringe rate when you look at health care, you look at pension cost as a percentage of payroll, and if you look at the retiree programs that we have. The second one that we really highlighted there was implement measures to reduce the OPEB liability. Other post-employment benefits, which is retiree health and life insurance, again, we have very generous programs. And unfortunately for us, we inherited a retirement system in the county that is so generous, but it also spills over into the OPEB requirements. We have right now a majority of our staff kind of in line with what public safety programs have. We have a 25 years of service, regardless of age, with an unreduced retirement benefit available immediately. And the mayor, as chairman of our retirement board, can tell you how many people we have that come up for retirement with 25 years of service, full unreduced pension immediately, and they're 47 years old. We actually set a record 2 meetings ago with a 43-year-old. We're going to be paying his pension for many, many years. And our current system right now will also carry that retiree and his dependents, his or her dependents, on our program until they turn 65, when we require going on to a Medicare supplement. But you're talking about 25 years of full insurance coverage for the retiree and dependents. It's just a plan that we can't afford any longer. So we'll definitely be making some proposals, making some changes in that regard. We have a very generous life insurance program. All of our retirees get 1 year's salary, regardless of the highest level that you achieved, and it lasts forever. And I think most of us would agree that that's a benefit that we're guaranteed to pay out. I don't think anybody's going to escape getting that death benefit if they're a retiree. We're going to have to look at something there. I mean, it's a year's salary. It's a very generous benefit. Those two we're going to be working on very quickly. We've got to reduce those costs because we can't afford to continue to have the fringe benefit cost escalate. In some of the other areas, one of the cross-cutting initiatives I got to mention here because Mike Carpenter's there. Mike, we're going back after a PTO plan. We have, unfortunately, an unlimited accumulation of sick leave Individuals can end up with hundreds of days of sick leave on the books, and magically toward the end of the career, every once in a while, we'll get some folks that get that 26-week flu that they just can't get over, like leading right up to retirement. We had a number of them in the sheriff's office when we were there, but the unlimited accumulation of sick leave is unusual, and also our accrual for sick leave is quite generous. We've got a lot of individuals that were hired many years ago that are earning 30 days of vacation, 30 days of sick leave, and the other types of leave that we have available. It makes for an authorized absence from work a little bit more than what we can afford. So we'll be looking at that again. I say that for Mike because he proposed a good plan. We worked together on it. We did not get it approved, unfortunately, but we're going to come back with a simpler plan, and we're going to make that one work. Instituting pay for performance is going to be a hard one. It's always difficult in government, but something we're going to look at. We're looking at outsourcing payroll and FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act functions, and I think we'll have some success there. We are deeply involved in a county-wide facility review and energy efficiency review. We've got old buildings. The average age of county facilities is greater than 40 years for each of our structures now. We've got some of them that are in the 60 to close to 75-year range, and our biggest and most active buildings now are over 30. So we've got to do some things there.
Let me jump in on that.
Sure.
Point real quick. One of the offices that's a joint city-county office is our Office of Planning and Development. And within our Office of Planning and Development, we've established our Office of Sustainability. I was in a conference this morning kicking off a sustainability conference where we had directors of those programs from across the country. And the point that I made to them as it relates to sustainability is that what all sustainability really is taking old issues and taking a new approach to how you manage old issues. Old issues such as how do we recapture the value of our older buildings? How can we take that building that's energy inefficient, make it energy efficient and very functional? How can we tie together and relate such things as public health and public safety and education, public education? What's the nexus among all of those 3 and 4 components? Now, that's sustainability, but it's also operational efficiency. And we want to start thinking of efficiency in government as being a large component of sustainability within government as well. So keep on.
In a public works organization, a lot of services there that could lend themselves perhaps to being done better by the private sector. We've not had much luck in the past, and again, as the mayor made comment, we have a legislative body that we have to get any large contract greater than $100,000 per year, and any kind of an activity that would perhaps eliminate county jobs, turn a function over to the private sector has been very difficult to accomplish. A perfect example is we had demonstrated savings in the food service operation at the Division of Corrections at the penal farm where we both used to work, and we knew it was ripe for a privatization act. We were able to demonstrate $600,000 worth of savings at the expense of 31 county jobs. We had the contractor that we were recommending was prepared to hire 21 of them. That gives you a pretty good clue there as to why they could do it much cheaper. They can do it with 21, we were doing it with 31, and they were going to give them jobs, but we were not successful at getting that one accomplished. We may make another run at that, as we will some of the others. But they're listed out there. We have a print shop, we have our own internal mail services, janitorial services throughout the organization, a property maintenance group, and fleet services that handles all of the automobile maintenance, all in-house with county employees. Rather than just a straight contracting out effort, though, the consultant has given us a good plan, and that is we're going to try to go through a managed competition process where our organizations, headed up by whatever manager heads up that unit, will in fact be able to submit a bid on behalf of their organization and compete with private industry so that we can find out who can do it most efficiently, who can save us some money and provide the service. We think that, again, many times the private sector is going to win out simply because of the cost of our labor, particularly with some of the fringe benefit costs. Yes, ma'am.
How much of this can you all do as an executive order, and how much do you have to have approved?
Almost all of these would require approval by the legislative body. We have, in fact, we have converted some of our operations over to contract operations on a very small scale without having to seek approval. Like, for example, we're pretty much throttling down our print shop because most of what we do, we contract out anyway. We've got personnel in there that we're going to reassign or downsize that organization and just continue to shift most of the work over to the local printing industry. A bigger operation like janitorial, though, when you think about the number of facilities that we have, that one would clearly be a contract that would be in excess of $100,000 that we would have to have legislative approval. So that's kind of the magic threshold right there.
You might give the group the composition of the county commission and, a little bit of that dynamic.
We'll let the mayor do that. That's elected official stuff.
We have a 13-member county commission. We have partisan local races at the county level. It's interesting, the city of Memphis has nonpartisan races. In the county, we have partisan races, which I wish I could get rid of that. It just is another dividing point when it comes to voting for some people. But we have a 13-member commission. Of course, Mike Carpenter used to be on the commission, and Mike can certainly speak to this, and feel free to jump in, Mike. But you have a 13-member commission, and of course the commission sets the tax rate, and the contracts that exceed $100,000 have to go before the county commission. The county mayor is responsible for submitting the consolidated budget, which involves actually coordinating with all of the elected officials. It's not like the city mayor, where the city mayor can mandate what all of the components feed into the budget. We have to negotiate. Now, to their credit, we have a very good group of elected officials here in Shelby County at the executive level. We've been able to work out our differences. They've been very helpful in helping us submit that budget. But there's some degree of partisanship within our county commission, which makes things more difficult. It's interesting, we really didn't see partisanship too much at the local level until about the last 5 or 6 years. Mike, would that be a fair assessment? And still, there are a number of issues where partisanship does not come into play, but occasionally on some of those critical issues, you'll see partisanship coming into play. But that's just something we have to deal with. It's the nature of what we're working with. But right now, we have 7 of our 13 members. 7 are Democrats, 6 are Republican, and I'm a Republican. So we deal with the partisanship. We get things accomplished. I will say, on balance, that we've done remarkably well in working with our county commission. They pull us through the knothole sometimes, and it gets a little bit contentious if you're in some of these commission meetings. But we seem to work through it. But it's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Why don't we go ahead, if we could, and just kind of move into questions, if that's all right, Harvey? And then
Yeah.
at the end, we could give you a chance to,
Sure.
maybe a couple minutes to wrap up. Is that okay, Louis? Oh, Mike, yeah.
That topic that the administration has going for it, that term limits kick in. About better than half of the county commission currently is now working in.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important that we elect good folks in these new districts. We've also gone to single-member districts, large multi-member districts, and so it's gonna. I'm not sure how it's gonna play out, but you're gonna get some good folks to work with. So I think that's a positive.
You want to make a closing
Blair,
comment?
let me make just one comment on your favorite subject here. It's at the very end of it and the conclusion. One thing we did not have PFM look at for us was the pension cost. Retirement cost, pension plans are getting so much publicity. If you looked at the local paper, City of Memphis has just been blasted right and left by various parties. They've had a study done. They've got some issues that they have to deal with. We, on the other hand, are quite solvent. We have about an 88% funded ratio in our pension fund, but the costs are increasing. Again, back to the culprit that I talked to you about a little bit earlier, our Plan C pension is quite expensive, and we're going to be paying out those folks for a long time. I didn't ask PFM to look at the pension cost because we've got a separate initiative of our own. We're working with the state treasurer, who has developed a plan that they implemented statewide. We're looking at something similar, or perhaps maybe 4 or 5 different options. But I think the mayor knows that probably for the beginning of his next term, we will, in fact, be proposing a new pension plan for all new hires. Pretty much you're protected once you get into a plan in county government, but we will be looking at something that will certainly reduce the contribution that we're having to make into the pension plan. Right now, all funds included, it's close to $35 million a year. We've got to find a way to reduce that contribution, and we'll be working. That's a favorite subject of the Memphis Tomorrow and the government efficiency team. In fact, we're meeting with them Wednesday to talk about some of those things. So it's not in the PFM study, but we're certainly looking at it because it's a big part of the cost of county government right now.
Let's hear from you.
I know that Memphis has made several attempts at this, and I'll treat Mayor Dean as being on the panel since he's sitting so closely. But would the political conditions ever be in any way aligned to where consolidated government would be both an efficiency and alignment strategy that Memphis could both pass and implement?
I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon here for a couple of reasons. It's been tried here 3 times. The most recent attempt was about 3 years ago, and it didn't pass overall. It barely passed inside the city of Memphis. It overwhelmingly was defeated outside the city of Memphis. And there were some who advocated immediately starting another campaign to consolidate. I said, no. First of all, we got to deal with some of the underlying issues that are pulling us apart. One of the toughest jobs that I've had as county mayor is bridging the urban-suburban divide. And there's still so many issues between the city and the county that have got to be resolved before we can reasonably expect to make any progress there. I was talking to a resident of one of our suburban communities recently, and they said, we are not a suburb. We're an independent community. I thought, yeah, but you certainly enjoy the Grizzlies, don't you? You like our zoo, but you've got some in our community that just are not ready to look at that as an issue. So I'm going to say politically that it's not in the cards for the foreseeable future. It's had very little success in Tennessee. I think that dual vote standard always makes it very tough. Mm-hmm.
I'm in Knox County, and I sit on 2 or 3 different boards, and while you touched on the pension plan, our pension plan up there, both city and county, clearly upside down. And the county costs us $26 million a year, and we're bringing in $10 million a year. Clearly unsustainable. We're clearly in the negative zone and have been there for 3 years. All the electeds, all the appointed, and all of the sheriff
that's why as hard as it is, you've got to make the annual required contribution. Generally, that's the real source of the problem. A lot of organizations make a flat amount into it that is totally insufficient. And most of us are still recovering from 2008. I'll tell you flat out that our pension fund, the trust fund, was a little over $1 billion right before the Grand Recession started, and we went down under $700 million. We're back above $1 billion, but we've had to jack up the contribution in order to do that. But as you point out, there's a lot of things you've got to do, and that's to look at the outlay, look at that actuarial accumulation of benefits that are out there forever, and make these pension plans a little bit more reasonable. I mean, ours is extremely good with a fairly low contribution from the employees, although we did make an increase of 2% just the mayor's first year into the pension fund. By the employees, everyone's contribution was increased by 2%. But we've got to have a less generous payout and a solid contribution every year and good investments. We're going through the same discussion you are, whether we want to have an 8% investment assumption or a 7.5%. It makes a difference, but the real secret is to cut back on the outflow of it and start making the contributions. The only way you're going to get there.
In Knox County, we can't get any of that to happen because there's so many people vested in the program that every time it's discussed or voted on or anything else, it just stays the same and we get that much closer to the split.
You got to start it for the new hires. We started a brand new plan that was less generous, that required you to go to a longer or an older working age before you were eligible for that pension the mayor's first year here. But even with that, I'll give you an example, and I don't want Mike Carpenter to take offense, but at that we went in with a multiplier of 2% per year of service. And the commission adjusted that up. It just didn't seem fair based on all the input from the labor organizations. They adjusted it up to 2.15. Well, that doesn't sound like much on a yearly multiplier for one pension, but actuarially that makes a huge impact on the future liability. So you're facing that, and certainly any change that makes it lesser, you've got all of the bargaining units and employee groups are going to be opposed to it. But we've got to balance these budgets and keep these funds solvent. So we got to make some hard choices sometime.
We're going from a defined benefit to a defined contribution slowly. We've got a ton of people on 3% COLA for life.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go to another subject.
Sure.
Mayor, talked about tenure school teachers this morning, and the old model of it's very difficult to get rid of non-productive employees. This governor has a plan with legislature to reform civil service. Out at the airport, we've got some folks that maybe don't work as hard as others, and I encourage the movement of civil service. Have y'all looked at any reform of civil service on the county side?
Well, that's a part of our comprehensive look at everything from pensions to some of the efficiency studies that we're talking about. So not per se, but as a part in context with many of the other HR functions that we have, there hasn't really been any discussion of eliminating civil service. There's some advantages to civil service, and I'm not going to, it certainly has certain protections in there for employees where protections are needed. So I don't know that I would be for throwing it out. I'd be certainly for looking at some modifications with it. Mm-hmm.
Mayor, I'm interested to hear both of you kind of fit in this issue. As we know, Shelby County does not have a consolidated government structure like a Nashville, County, or we don't have one either in parts of Montgomery County. And I'd just like to hear you talk about how your interactions are with city government, both Memphis and the other cities that exist in Shelby County, and how you think that works and what you think the direction of the future is.
Well, it's interesting because I think this probably unique to a county mayor's position is that the success that I have depends upon my ability to build those relationships. And we have 7 municipalities here in Shelby County in the large unincorporated area. So a great deal of my time is spent on that. When I was elected, I set up a transition committee, and I designated one person to really give me thoughts in that particular area. So certainly on the front end, I recognize the importance of building that relationship. And it is true, a great deal of my success depends upon my skills in developing that type of relationship. Spend a great deal of time with the suburban mayors. Probably, well, most recently, within the last month, we probably had 2 or 3 meetings on everything from air quality to job development to issues of that type. Spend a lot of time going to festivals and all of that for the social side of it. Saturday, I started off with a parade at Orange Mound and went to the Goat Festival in Millington, and then to Cooper Young Festival in Midtown, and then went to Beth Shalom Synagogue. I said, wow, as a good little Protestant boy being invited to a synagogue on Yom Kippur. But do a great deal of that. It basically comes down to you got to have the fire in the belly to enjoy it. And it probably, more than most elected officials, it is a job where the success depends more and more on relationships than anything else. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but Harvey, you want to weigh in on any of that?
There's not,
From a budget
yeah.
standpoint, talk about it.
You know, when we talked about the possibility of consolidation, there's really not as much overlap between the city of Memphis government and the other municipalities in county government. We've kind of got our carved out piece of it, primarily the criminal justice system and education funding. I mean, that's where most of our money goes, almost entirely. Our general fund budget is for the criminal justice system, what with 41 separate courts, all the court clerks, the sheriff, the public defender, all of those activities are county only. The health department is county only. We have to interact with them, but there's not the great amount of overlap of duplicated services, I think, that a lot of people believe that there is. Mayor likes to call us a wholesale government, and I think that's what we are, where the municipalities get right down to the specifics. But we run the jail, we run the prison, we run all the courts, we run the health department. And that is most of it, plus we serve as the municipality, if you will, for 100,000 residents that live in the unincorporated area. We take care of their streets, fix their potholes, take care of their drainage issues, just like a municipality would.
How do you relate to the school system?
Well, the school system, it used to be dually funded by the city of Memphis and Shelby County, and now with our merged system, it's exclusively a county funding responsibility in addition to the federal and state funding that they receive.
Do you provide the funding, like I guess I asked, do you provide the funding dollars amount, and then they do everything else?
About they being the school system? Oh, yeah, they have their own governments. We just give them the money. Now, it's interesting, under this merger, there's a 3-year reset on maintenance of effort. And we're trying to take full advantage of that 3-year reset. That means that we're not bound by maintenance of effort for 3 years. And that's so that we can kind of figure out this school budget, which is going to get even more complicated next year because this year we merged 2 systems into one, and next year we're taking one and breaking it into about 5 with municipal schools. And we're going to have to reshuffle the deck and take a look at it at that point. But I want to come back to your question, Mayor, about the relationship.
Oops, I'm sorry.
I talked a while ago about the urban-suburban divide and some of the conflicts we have there. Mayor Wharton and I have really endeavored to try to bridge that gap as best we can. And he and I spend a tremendous amount of time together. And one thing that we also have in common, now I tell folks he's a black Democrat, I'm a white Republican. What do we have in common? Well, we have a lot in common, and a lot of it has to do with just our approach to government. One of my grave concerns is first of all, the lack of civility in government. There's just a tremendous level of incivility, at least in our government here locally. And I see that manifested in just a continuous decline in people who are participating in the electoral process. And I think in large part it's because they get very frustrated with this. And anything that we can do to try to restore confidence, to give people faith in what we're doing, we do it. And Mayor Wharton and I both kind of agree on that. I don't throw him under the bus. He doesn't throw me under the bus. We formally meet about once every 2 weeks. We'll sit down in my office or his office, and we'll have our agenda, and we'll start working through our agenda, and we'll try to identify where we disagree, then we'll start identifying where we can stand up together. But it kind of goes back to that relationship thing I was talking about. Los Angeles had a contested mayoral race that drew 20% turnout. In our last city election here 2 years ago, there was 18% turnout. It's getting increasingly worse as far as participation. So he and I really, really work at trying to find areas where we can collaborate and agree. And when I walk around the city, it's one of the things I hear is, my goodness, we're glad you two aren't fighting all the time. And I take that seriously.
Well, I think we're about out of time, and I just want to thank both of you for being here today, and
Can I
really.
close out something? I asked Blair if I could close out for just a moment. I really, really am pleased with the local folks that we have here. Jack Sammons has stepped into a big job out there with our airport and all that goes on with that. And, you know, Jack fancies himself a storyteller, but it's Jack's personality that I think is really working us through this, through some of these complicated issues. It's hard not to like someone like Jack Sammons. He has a hell of a wine cellar. Jack, you ought to have them all over at your house for a glass of wine some night. But Jack's doing a great job with that. Martha has been such a mainstay in our community for so many years with Federal Reserve. Laura Adams has probably the biggest problem in this county that she's managing, and that's the most popular park you can imagine. Laura runs our Shelby Farms operation, and you go out there and it is crowded. And what it tells me is the public's demanding more. And Laura's done a great job of just really making Shelby Farms what it is. Mike Carpenter, I call Mike our utility infielder. Wherever there's a problem, Mike seems to be there. And it's good to have that type of representation from our community here in your leader. This is the inaugural program, isn't it? This is the so you all represent our community quite well, and I want to thank you for that. And thank you all for your time and comments, and you commissioners from the Haslam administration, you all give us a lot of attention, and we do appreciate that too. Thank you.